Welcome to the latest edition of the Red Book Podcast. Today's edition is actually really interesting. We're digging into error coinage. Error coinage is one of these topics that gets a lot of attention. A lot of people who don't know much about coins get excited when they hear about error coins, coins struck off center, things like that. But the range of error coins is extremely fascinating and diverse, and it actually requires quite a bit of expertise. And today, Jeff Garrett has the two industry experts on this topic. We have Fred Weinberg and John Sullivan. I mean, Fred is, the OG, the godfather of error coins in our industry. He's recently retired, so he takes the time today to speak with Jeff and talk about some of his legendary, purchases and the coins that he loves. John Sullivan is sort of the heir apparent in this industry, who is the young up-and-coming coin dealer who everybody really trusts and loves. So great exposure for our viewers to see these two people talk with Jeff about, the specialty hobby of error coinage in numismatics. I hope you enjoy it. Please click and subscribe if you don't already so you can keep learning in a very honest way about numismatics. And on the Red Book Podcast, Jeff and I are taking notes as we speak with all these experts, and we're going to reflect a lot of what we're learning into new editions. So this is really great. You're here learning with us at the ground floor.
We're trying to have icons in the hobby and also new movers and shakers. And today we have the privilege of having one of each. Fred Weinberg, who is probably one of the legends. If anybody knows anything about mint errors, knows Fred, or if you collect them, you would know him because he's been doing it for over 50 years. And we also have John Sullivan, who is a dealer who is currently probably he's my go-to guy for mint errors. And I think they both, between two of them, have a lot of knowledge they can share with everyone. And we'll get started. But I just want to welcome you guys both today. I appreciate your patience very, very, very much.
Good to be here.
And John, I'm going to start with you on this one. How did you get into mint errors, and what got you attracted to it?
Well, I found some die varieties in my coin collection. There were some little die chips, nothing special. And I just thought they were so fascinating to find. They were worth, it said in the guide that I had like $1 or $2. And I thought, I only paid a penny for these. These are 2 cents or 3 cents. This is really neat. So I started collecting die varieties, bought some, like the Cherry Picker's Guide. I bought some other books on errors. And I started cherry picking and finding error coins and die varieties. And I collected normal coins as well, but errors and die varieties just always kind of stood there as something a little more fun to do. Yeah. And so I ended up going to the summer seminars in 2001, I believe it was. And I took the mint error and variety class taught by James Wiles, and, and just really, really kept going from there.
Yeah. I went to the summer seminar in 1974, and it really kind of galvanized my interest in being a coin dealer. When you went to that, did you come away from it thinking that was a coins as a career option?
I was already wanting to do coins as a career, and that's what made me want to go there, but it redoubled. I met a lot of people who were still in the hobby, just different people who were movers and shakers actually in the hobby still.
Yeah, that's good. So, I just got back a few weeks ago. I was teaching the advanced coin grading, and we have like 275 students out there, and it still has the magic and the power. So it's a really wonderful thing. Anybody watching this, they should think about summer seminar.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's a great immersion, wonderful thing. And I think and if you're interested in it as a career, really is good, because it shows you the real nitty-gritty of the hobby, and also like you say, you meet other people who have chosen it as a career, and it's inspirational.
Yeah, so, definitely.
That's good. Well, Fred, I want to circle back a little bit because I wanted to make sure all our audio was working good. Your origin story goes back a little bit further. So tell us how you got started in mint errors, and how you made it a full-time business.
Well, I would say around 1960, when I was 10 years old, I was collecting coins, and I had finished my Lincoln Cent and Jefferson Nickel and Roosevelt Dime blue books, and was trying to decide what I wanted to collect next. And everything else, every other series, was just too expensive. But I'd always been interested in unusual things. So somehow I got into errors because I was always interested in reading Coin World's Collectors Clearinghouse, the last page in Coin World, the page written by Jim Johnson. And I was just fascinated with these old-fashioned black and white pixelated photographs of error coins. And that motivated me to learn more and more about the minting process. And I had a paper route around the same time while I was 10 or 11 years old. And one night I got a $10 gold piece as payment for 25 cents for my monthly newspaper subscription that I was delivering. Kept it for a couple of years. And when the Kennedy proof sets came out in early 1964 at $2.10, I didn't buy one. I wasn't able to. But 6 or 8 months later, they went up to $20, $24. And I said, I want one. So I traded to my local coin shop my $10 gold piece, 1882, for 1964 proof set, which today is worth about 30.
Transaction.
Yes.
Still
yes.
worth
So,
that's still worth $25, and your $10 gold piece worth almost $2,000.
yes.
So
Yeah.
Hey, Fred.
That was a good lesson to learn about hard assets.
yeah.
How important was the bowl collection with your takeoff? Because I know you've always mentioned that as a big part of your early career. If I could interrupt there.
Boy, did I wish I had that collection back. In 1974, John Hamrick came to my office when I was working for Numismatics Limited in Beverly Hills. That was my second job. And he had this incredible collection of about 2,000 type coin US error coins from 1795 to 1955. I think that's when it ended, 55, maybe 56, 2,000 pieces, unbelievable, fantastic things. He wanted at the time $60,000 for the collection, which was like an ungodly amount for error coins. But what I ended up doing was sitting down with these, I think, 6 double row stock boxes of raw error coins, and I just ran a tape of what I would pay for them. And when I got to about 80 to 85% of the entire deal, and I came up with 60 grand, I said, okay, I'm going to buy the deal. I asked permission of Harry Gordon, who owned the company. He said, fine. And there were so many coins that I didn't cost them. As I sold them, I figured every coin I sold was at cost. And when I got to $60,000, every coin after that became the profit. And it took me about a year, and I had sold almost every coin in the collection for $150,000, which was a lot of money back in 1974. And some of
That
those
was huge
coins
amount of
today
money.
are very famous and worth a heck of a lot more than I sold them for in 74.
Did you keep any of those in your personal collection?
No, I didn't
later?
keep any of those. I had a philosophy: you can't collect what you deal in, because
Right.
it either drains you financially, personally, or you're taking the profit away from the company. But I was allowed to put away a few coins every year that I liked, that I ran across, but nothing from the Bolt collection, to my detriment.
Okay.
What was that collection again? What was the
It was
name?
called Dr. Conway Bolt. He had
Bolt.
sold,
Okay,
Actually,
great.
he
I
had
actually have
sold
a
his
few
entire,
pictures. I got the
oh,
catalog here.
yeah,
Oh, there you go. That's
There's a
cool.
couple of them.
and
Yeah,
and
a couple
also,
parts.
right. And I should
Yeah.
mention that Dr. Conway Bolt sold his collection through Stax in 1966. At the time, they weren't even interested in the heirs. When the family contacted them in either 1973 or 74, they offered $10,000, or they were offered $10,000 for the collection, and they thought it was worth more. And somehow John Hamrick ended up with it, and it's
That's
there's
funny.
some great coins in that.
That's good. Sometimes, in my career, I got my hands on a couple of big collections, and it takes, when you're early part of your career, it takes some of those big deals can really launch you going, because that gave you capital, gave you confidence, and really probably was formative in your early years for what you were doing. So that's,
Yeah.
I see that's happened in my career as well.
Yeah.
John, dealing mint here it seems like a narrow focus. Maybe it's not as narrow as I think, but to choose like that as a career path now, explain to us a little bit like how a coin dealer can operate under just one specialty. I call it, I guess, a specialty group. Is that
Yeah.
how that works?
Well, like I said before, I liked U.S. coins as well, and I planned to get into that when I first wanted to become a dealer. But I started focusing more and more on error coins because they were just so fascinating, so interesting. Every coin's a little bit of a puzzle you have to figure out. So that was just really fun, and I enjoy it like that to this day. Every coin I get in over my desk, I'm like, okay, what error is this? Is it worth less? Is it worth more? But the business side of it really is just like with regular coins. It's figuring out what is the retail value of this coin, and then paying a fair price, and then selling it at a fair price. And in doing that, you get customers that trust you, and you make a profit, and then hopefully they'll come back and sell to you when they liquidate their own collection again, and you just repeat the process. So you're just kind of that middleman connecting coins to the customer, and it works.
Yeah. How many? I don't even. I guess I would have no idea this question. How many guys that deal in errors? It's like you're probably one of the few I know that like is an error dealer mostly. Is there many other guys? Is there? You have some other competitors that are kind of like? Is there very many?
There's not. There's really. I mean, maybe one other
Yeah.
dealer that just does mostly errors, but really doing just error coins. I wouldn't say there's anybody else who's full-time just mint errors.
Yeah.
There's part-time guys, and there's guys who have some errors in their inventory and they're knowledgeable, but they don't just do mint errors.
Well, that's good. Well, it's I can see it from a strategy, and I assume the margins are a little bit better than buying and selling US at bullion at 1% or rare coins at
Yeah,
5% and 10% because
you have to have a
I
little bit more room because there's not a gray sheet for them. So
right,
I may pay $100 for a coin, and one time I'll sell it for 95. The next coin I sell for 115. So you have to have a little more wiggle room in there.
right, and I assume they sometimes you have to be patient too because you might have an error. It's not like I would think that mint errors aren't as liquid. Like if you buy something for
Absolutely.
$1,000 and don't like it the next day, you can't get 985 for it.
Yeah.
You gotta
And
have patience to sell it.
that's kind of understanding the market, because there's some errors that I think of as the liquid types, and I'm not worried about paying very close. Some of them are harder to sell, and you have to be a little more careful. And I, for example, just sold today the end of a deal that I bought in 2019. It was the last few pieces from that deal, the
Yeah,
very
so
last few.
took some
And I
patience.
mean, they were so irreplaceable. I was happy to buy them because I was like, I can't replace these. But I
Yeah.
just today actually sold the very last few pieces from that deal. I bought
So
the whole group of it in 2019.
you believed in them, so that
I
was the thing.
did.
Yeah, you
I did.
believed in
And
them,
there were
right?
hundreds. There was a few hundred of it. So,
Yeah. Well, that is
but
neat. Well, Fred, John's, buying and selling. I don't know if you get a little jealous when I get back in the game, but
you're
you've
welcome
announced your
back anytime,
retirement.
Fred.
Yeah, you've announced your retirement being a full-time coin dealer a few
Right.
years ago, and that's really unusual for coin dealers. Tell us about that decision to do that, and how's retirement going?
Well, retirement's going great, and yeah, I think like every other coin dealer, I assumed I would die with my inventory because one of the great things about coin dealing is that you can retire to whatever degree you want to. And I always thought, all right, so maybe I'd go to 3 shows a year instead of 8 or something like that. But after COVID, maybe a year after COVID, I decided I was in my 70s. 1972 was my 50th year of being a full-time coin dealer after being a collector for 15 years before that. And I had hooked up with my girlfriend from 1968, and who lives in Asheville, North Carolina. And I just looked at the totality of my life, and I said, my age, my career, I reconnected with my first love, and it's time to retire. And I'm really glad I did. I picked a good market. The market during COVID was a lot better than everybody thought, and I realized if I'm going to retire, maybe I should do it now than wait for this particular good market to crash or to come down and then wait another 6 to 8 years for an up market and sell it when I was in my 80s. So I made the decision to liquidate my personal collection and my inventory in 1972, and I've been enjoying my retirement. I watch you know the the Collectors Universe chat room postings. I like to do that. I'll read Coin World. I keep up with the news and the gossip. What I really miss is the camaraderie with the guys at coin shows and seeing some great coins at coin shows, and especially when I was doing the authentication and the description for the error coins for PCGS, which John does now. That was incredible because every time you'd see a big group of coins, you never knew what was going to be in there. And
Yeah.
there were great errors, there were common errors, there were damaged coins, but every now and then there'd be something that you couldn't imagine, and
Mhm.
I miss that. But as far as going
Actually,
to
I'll
the
ask you.
office, I don't miss going to the office.
Yeah, well, I know how it is with I'm getting to an age where I have to start thinking about my career as well. And But as long as you have overhead, you got to be in the game, and you got to be out there working and, grinding it out and doing your thing. So, to really truly free yourself, you had to get away from the overhead and do that. So that does make sense. I do want to, that kind of reminds me of it, this pops in my head as a question. You guys have been buying this, selling, Fred forever, and John, for quite a while. How often does like a great error coin show up that no one's ever heard of, like discovered? Does that happen very often, or did wow, like where'd that come from type thing? I'll ask John.
Fred.
I'll ask you
Okay.
first, because you've been doing it more recently for PCGS.
Okay.
You see anything come across as like that's a neat discovery?
I do. I'll see a coin occasionally, and I'm thinking, I wish I could go talk to people about this coin, but of course, it's someone owns it, and they have the right to let it loose to the hobby when they're ready. But yeah, absolutely. I'll see a new coin. I'm thinking this is a new coin to the market. Well, for example, in the top 100 error book, there is a listing for 1920 Buffalo nickel off center on a cent planchet, and it says it's unique, but I another one came up, and and that was a coin I bought, and so there's two of them. Well, when they put the book out, it only has one in there. So there's always a coin that people forgot about just waiting around the corner.
Yeah, that's neat. Because I think, to me, that's why I love what I do. Is I got to come to the
Mhm.
office. I never know what the next phone call is. And John, Fred, is that still, you run across some new ones occasionally when you were really
Well,
doing it?
when I was active, I would say from the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, every coin show I would go to, whether it was a mid-size show or a large show, if I didn't buy a coin collection of error coins, there would be one incredible single coin, usually a type coin error, although sometimes it could be a dramatic modern error. And I would come home with a major error never seen before, type coin error from every coin show. And that in the last 20 years, it hasn't happened quite as much, probably because of auctions and everything else. But that's the thing about errors. You never know what they're gonna show you at a coin show.
Yeah, well, that's one of the advantages of, Fred, when you were the man, and now John, you're kind of the guy, and they do show up. They're going to come ask you for, as a minimum, ask you for advice. So that's neat.
You know,
That is what's good at being branded, as being the expert in that
Yeah.
field.
yeah,
Uh,
there was one guy. One time he contacted me, just as a neat little story. It was one of the most surprising things that popped up. It was a guy out of Kentucky, and he said he had a bag of coins that he'd won in a bingo game, and he said one of them looked like an error, and I was like, this is probably nothing. This doesn't sound very promising. He doesn't seem to understand coins very well. And he was describing a coin. He said, well, it's pressed into one side, and it's the same side as it's on the other. So we'll send me a picture. And it turned out it was a brand new, unknown Barber dime obverse die cap. And it was about a quarter-inch deep all the way around. And it was just
wow,
amazing. It's a $5,000 to $10,000 coin.
geez,
Incredible coin.
that's
And
funny.
it was just in a bag of junk.
Yeah, it's funny how people
So,
get things. Well, that's why I say it's why we love what we do. Discovery,
mhm.
the element of it. Um, Fred, I know you, because I had the catalogs in my office. You sold some of your great put away coins in a heritage auction.
Right.
What were some of your favorite coins in that sale, and what were some of the highlights?
Well, boy, I sold my last mule, the Sacagawea quarter mule that I had. One of my favorite coins in my collection that I had put away was an 1880 Morgan dollar that was about 40% off center at 12 o'clock. PCGS graded at MS63. I love that coin, and the collector who ended up buying it, I happened to see at a Long Beach show when I was there a couple of years ago, and he loves it. I can tell you one of the coins that I really wish I had kept, in 1851, $20 gold piece struck on a large cent that Saul
Oh,
Kaplan of Cincinnati had listed on the last page of his pattern price list in 1974 when I was at Numismatics Limited. It was $1,000. And I asked my boss, Harry Gordon, can I buy it? And he said, if you think you can sell it. I bought it for 1,000, sold it for 5,000, bought it back at 7,500, sold it for 10,000, and it traded hands a few times, and it's been in a collection in Florida for probably 40 years. I saw the coin maybe 6 or 8 years ago for the first time since 1974, and that's a coin that I always say I should have kept. Why didn't I
no
keep
way.
that
That
coin?
was
I
the one you
loved
got
it at the
away.
time.
What'd your silver dollar sell for?
The silver dollar only sold, I believe, for about $75,000 plus the juice. I had assumed it was 100,000 plus coin. It's the finest known dated Morgan dollar by far. So it brought 75 grand. I paid in 1977 or 78, I think I paid 2 grand for it at a coin show.
That's
That was,
that's a good return.
yeah,
Can't beat
not too
that.
bad.
This may sound silly, but a lot of people may be watching this, and I'm not always sure myself, get confused. What is your definition of a mint error? Because a lot of people, I come to work every day and I have to answer about 20 emails almost every day, and about half of them are about mint errors, and I gets to be, and about half of those I actually forward on to John, so he gets to see them. So John, let you go first. What's the definition of a mint error?
I would say it's a clean definition would be it's a coin that's manufactured outside of mint tolerances, but it can't be something that's just on the die itself. If it's on the die, then it's a die variety. Anything else is a mechanical, it's a mint error, like an off
Unintentionally.
center, double strike, off metal, partial collar, any of those kinds of errors.
And by definition, that makes them all basically unique, right? Because they're one-offs,
Absolutely.
essentially.
Yeah. All unique. Whereas die varieties are never unique. And people often confuse die varieties and mint errors, but that's the difference. If it's on the die, it'll repeat. And so
Yeah,
you
like a
can create a
1955 double die penny is a mint, is a variety, not a mint error, essentially, right? A 1955 double die penny. So
absolutely, yeah. Most of the things that are incorrect on coins in the red book are die varieties. They're not mint errors. And that's
right.
why they're in the price guide like that.
Yeah, a lot of people
Because
get
they
confused
repeat.
by that. Fred, do you have
Mhm.
anything to add to that? That
Well,
makes it
I mean, when I was growing up in the coin business and the error hobby, a die variety like a 55 double die as a general category was considered an error. But in 1977, when Bill Fiva came out with the first cherry picker's guide, and they called it Cherry Picker's Guide to Die Varieties, there started to be a separation where people realized as a general category to the non-collector, you could call a 55 double die an error. But if you had been collecting coins for any short amount of time, you realized there were die varieties, as John said, and then there were the mechanical errors. One of the interesting things about the mechanical errors is, and again, as John had said, you can have a $2 or $3 partial collar penny, and that's called a mechanical error, which is in my category a major error because it has to do with the machinery and the press and the dies and the collar. Or you could have an off-center gold piece or a double struck, Kennedy half dollar. Those are still major mechanical errors. Some are better than others.
right.
It's like
Mhm.
cars. Some are Rolls Royces and some are Volkswagens.
Mhm.
Fred, you might have a little more person to ask this first to, but I've heard the U.S. Mint now has equipment that makes the mint errors coming out as like a lot less of them. Can you tell us about that? How that happened, and
Yeah.
like mechanically, something about the presses I heard.
In general, starting in 2001, from the knowledge that I got from my contacts at the Mint had installed for every denomination except Kennedy halves and the Sacagawea or presidential dollars, they had installed horizontal presses where the coins were struck like this instead of like this, which is the way they had been struck for 2,000 or more years. And um, although some of those presses were starting to be tested around 1996 and 1997, there are some quarters struck in that time period, 96, 97, that we could tell were struck on these horizontal presses. But by doing that, basically, if the coin is being struck like this and it's misfed into the die and the collar, it's going to fall. Whereas in the old method, if it was misfed, you could get an off-center penny being halfway into the collar, halfway out, not being ejected and getting double struck. So in general, there are a few exceptions. Anything after 2001, anything dated 2002 or later, with a few exceptions, are made on these Schuler horizontal presses, which have eliminated off-center strikes for many dates in the last 23 years, and eliminated multi-struck coins. They've cut down the volume of major dramatic error coins considerably in the last
Mhm.
23 years.
It's a dramatic impact on that specialty, so that's
Yes.
a whole lot
Yes.
different. So,
Yeah.
do you think that helps the field, or is it hurt it that you don't have
Well,
all these new coins coming out?
I can say that when that first became obvious around 2001, 2, 3, 4, that these coins are all being struck with these horizontal presses, everybody said, "What's going to happen to the air hobby?" And are people going to stop collecting coins? I go, yeah, people stop collecting 2 cents and 3 cent pieces and large cents when they stop.
That's a good
So
point.
why would they continue to collect errors? I mean, it was a ridiculous argument. People love mint error coins because they're eye appealing, they're dramatic, and now they're even better because they don't make them like that anymore.
Yeah, well, that's neat. John, do you have any? I guess you're more in the center of the storms now, so you kind of see. I guess I would think when it makes some of those that come out, it probably makes them a more rare collectible now, right?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like the if you go to like the Morgan and Peace dollars back when they did the big silver melts back 100 years ago and thereabouts. It made some coins that maybe weren't as interesting or collectible suddenly interesting and collectible. So like prior a 2001 50% off center Lincoln cent is worth about, I don't know, $10 or something, $20. Now, one for 2002 is worth about $500 or more if you can find one, and
Wow.
good luck finding one. If you found one on a 2009 cent, which I don't think I've ever even seen, it'd probably go for $3,000 or $4,000. A
Wow,
50%
that's really
off
cool.
center one.
There's many dates. There's many dates of pennies through half dollars that don't exist in any
Yeah.
type of an error, except maybe a partial collar, maybe a clad layer missing, something not super dramatic, but they just don't exist, especially for off centers.
Yeah,
And so it's
that's really
exciting
fast.
anytime you see one now. It's like,
Well,
wow,
that's
I found
fascinating
an
information.
off
I think a
center.
lot of people don't realize that
Right.
modern mint errors are really rare. So
Right.
that's interesting. Um, so John, I mentioned it earlier, and I know how many calls I get from the public about what they think are mint errors. How do you deal with? Do you have like a standard stock answer when everyone sends you like, what's this damaged coin as a mint error? I'm sure you get a lot of people forward these calls to you.
Yeah, I do have some standard answers because I get so many emails and phone calls and
Yeah.
stuff. I have to try to just use my time wisely, I guess. But some of the coins that where it's actually an error, I'll try to give more time and explain, hey, this is worth certifying, send it in for grading, or this is the kind of error it is. And I try to take advantage of the opportunity so to point people towards coin clubs and towards buying a red book, buying some guidebooks, because this may be the spark of their interest and their entry into the hobby. So you don't want to, you want to encourage them, even if they're don't have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, you don't want to be rude to them. So
Yeah.
let's talk about one of the one I get almost the most calls about 1982 Lincoln pennies, about the
Oh, yeah.
copper and the zinc and stuff like that. I think I mentioned to you in one of our emails. So
Yeah.
actually it's funny, you caught a little error in the red book we need to correct next time. So it's funny,
Oh,
even
yeah.
even if it's the red book didn't have it exactly right. So tell us a little bit about that one coin.
Well, there's 7 different varieties of 1982 Lincoln cents in terms of the
7?
dates. 7 different ones. Yep.
But-
The one there's the 82 small date and there's 82 large date, and they're struck on zinc planchets and copper planchets. Well, they're made both of them. I think would be for both years, except for both large and small date, and for both D and Philadelphia, except for the 1982 D small date in copper. So that's the only one that's rare of those. The only one that's a mint error. It's 82D small date copper. And that one is pretty easy to tell. You just look at the date and you can see the small date. It looks different than the large date. And then you have to weigh it. And if it weighs around 3.1 grams, you might have one. But if it weighs 2.5, it's just zinc. It's normal.
I think next year's red book, now that I'm on to do pricing for red book, is maybe next year we'll have a little box in there to talk about that coin, because that's so many people have a question about that, and maybe have a little bit better pictures. That might be a good one to focus on. That'd be kind of fun.
And y'all had the entry in the red book is 82D small date copper. So all you needed to do is put dash 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 and have 2 known at the end, or 1 known.
Yeah,
It's 1 or 2.
It's only 2 known is what that is.
It's 1 or 2. It's something like that. The one that
Well-
sold for it was 18,000 or 19,000 in a major auction.
Well, that's interesting. Pivoting to something else, and this is something I've had a real fondness for, because it was one of my favorite creations that I came up with, 100 greatest concept. And many years ago, Fred, I know you co-authored the 100 greatest mint errors with Dave Kameyer and Nick Brown. Can you tell us your experience about putting that book together, and like, was it hard making the list of the 100 greatest, and how was that experience?
It was a great experience, and I'm glad you asked the question, because I probably should explain something. What we did was decide that we wanted to have eligible for the 100 greatest errors only coins that Dave could photograph currently. So there could have been a dramatic error coin that would have been in the top 10, but if the only picture was Coin World from 1965, we had to throw that out because we wanted consistency for the
Yeah.
book, obviously. So we took probably close to a year, 9 months to a year, to try to get as many collectors that we knew, the dealers that we talked to, photographs, descriptions of the coins, and then we sent out a list of about 240 coins to 18 to 20 dealers, collectors, researchers, people at the ANA, the Smithsonian, uh, to have them vote on it. And since the book came out, I think in 2009 or 2010, I would have people come up to me at a coin show and go, "What about this coin? What about that coin?" Well, I was familiar with it, but nobody knows where that coin is. So if we couldn't get a picture of it, it wasn't eligible to be it wasn't eligible for the book. When you do normal coins, your top 100 US coins, if you wanted to do a Stella, you could
Yeah,
find
lots of them.
you could find someone that had it and borrowed it. But a lot of these error coins are in permanent collections that rarely surface, and we have no idea. There's a lot of coins. If we ever do another book, there's a lot of coins that are eligible if we can find them and take pictures of them.
Well, I think when we were talking earlier, John, I think John Vagabond would like you to do a second edition. So I think you
Yeah.
need to come out of
I need to
retirement.
talk to Dave. I need to talk to Kameyer too.
Yeah, and now you got John Sullivan can maybe help out too. So
Help, yes.
that
Yeah.
would be great.
Yeah.
Well, John, have you handled many of the coins that are actually in that book over the years? Have you ever
Um,
handled a 43 copper penny?
yeah, well, I saw the that I have not done a 43 copper. There was a couple. There was like it was an 1847 die cap large cent. There was the
That's from the
1920.
bolt. That's from the Bolt collection. If I can
Okay,
interrupt.
that was one. Yeah. The 1920 Buffalo on the cent, but that one I've done twice. So one of them wasn't in the book.
Well, I'll ask you guys both this. So on the cover of the book, or I think the 2000 Sacagawea Mule was listed as one. When the book was published, you still don't think that coin would rank number one as the most desirable coin, error coin?
I always assumed that the 43 copper penny would be voted number one. I was very surprised when the 18 or 19 people voted that coin, but also the coin had probably just come out a few years earlier, so it was in everybody's head. I think if it was voted on today, it would probably the 43 copper would probably be number one, and the mule would be three or four, five, something like that. It would lose a few places.
I'd agree with Fred on that. I mean, I think the
Yeah.
43 copper is the most popular mint error
Yeah.
far and away, and it's most valuable. So it's the king of errors, I think. And I think the mule would be second. And my personal favorite is still the peace dollar on the quarter planchet. I think it's the
Yeah.
only silver dollar off metal that there is. There are no
That's
others.
cool.
More than
And if I can add that the person that owns the 1851-20 on a large cent owns that piece also.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's great. Well, we know where to start. We know when you do your second edition, we know where to get the photographs from. So that'd
Exactly.
be great. Another thing's a crazy story for people watching this is the fact that the Sacagawea mules, one guy owns like most of them, right? Or has tried to buy as many of them as he can. How many are there known, and how many does he have?
Well, I haven't looked at my sheet in a long time. I think there's about 20 listed now, and Tommy Bullock of New Mexico owns, off the top of my head, probably 12 or 13 of them.
Wow.
So more than half, and he loves them. He loves them. He says,
Obviously,
yes,
I think of
obviously.
all the things I've seen in coins, I've never seen a guy try to buy all 20 of a six-figure coin. Buying them. That's an interest. He'd be a fun one to have on the podcast someday to see what his
Oh yeah, he's got a
philosophy is.
personality too.
Yeah, is he? That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Asking both of you, you guys, I think Fred, you mentioned it earlier, and is about the study of mint errors is really understanding of the manufacturing process with coins. I think John mentioned like summer seminar is a great place to learn about that. What books that are out there that really help explain the minting process? Because I know when I got ready for this interview, I was actually astounded, and I'm going to look at it some more myself. But you did a great job in the 100 Greatest Mint Error book. The back of it's got a really good section on the minting process. And I recommend everybody watching this to get a copy of that book if they can find one, because that's really great information. Is there other places that you'd recommend?
Well, the first thing I want to say is the back of that book is Dave Kameyer's credit. He took the photographs and he wrote the descriptions because Dave has been to the mint. I've had a couple of floor tours of all the different mints, but Dave used to go there on a much more regular basis. So he wrote that book. He should get the full credit. I think the ANA years ago came up with a pretty thick book on the minting process that's good. The Aerocoin Encyclopedia used to be really good, published by Arne Margolis, but it's a little out of date because it doesn't include any of the Schuler horizontal press information that we were talking about. But it's good for things before the year 2000, as an example. It's been out of print. You can find them on eBay on occasion, but the Aerocoin Encyclopedia would be a good book for some basic knowledge of the minting process. And this ANA book, which I don't know the exact title, it's a bigger format, also explains in great deal the minting process. If I can also add, it's important to know the minting process because when you learn how coins are made, it helps whether you're looking at a Morgan silver dollar or gold coin, you can help determine, is this coin legitimate? One of the benefits and one of the areas that got me into detecting counterfeits and helping the Secret Service and other organizations in detecting counterfeits was because I had knowledge of the minting process and I could look at a gold coin or a silver dollar and say, that wasn't made at the US Mint. A lot of coin dealers 25, 35 years ago didn't have knowledge of the minting process.
Yeah. I mean, even what I do with like early proof coins and things like that, I try to study that because I think you understand how coins are made. It gives you a better understanding of, authenticity, plus also, whether or not coins approved for a BU. I think there's a lot of that stuff.
Right.
So, John, do you have anything to add on that, or?
The book that Fred's mentioned from the ANA is I believe is a correspondence course they have. It's
Right.
if I can't attend the summer seminars, get the
I
book.
think
And
I
I recommend that book to people all the time because
Yeah.
it's just such a great intro through the minting process. But there's also some good videos on, last I checked, on the US Mint's website on just the basic minting process, kind of a live action kind of video. And there's some on that the US Mint and other mints around the world have put on YouTube. So if you punch in like World Mint videos, you can see some interesting videos on them
Yeah.
striking gold proof coins in Australia, or British, them making various world coins. And you can see in watching that why people will say, well, how did this world coin get struck at this mint? It's because they take contracts and they strike coins for mints around the world. So you start understanding that when you see how they make coins and what they produce.
Yeah, last week I was in Cincinnati for a coin show and I got invited to the Osborne Mint, and I did a
Mhm.
floor tour seeing them making some coins, and they make coins for other sovereign countries as well.
Okay.
And I went, and if you haven't done it, if anybody watching this, if you ever get a chance to England, go to Cardiff, Wales. They do a really great mint tour. You can walk around the floor, behind glass, but you walk through the whole place, and they make coins for all over the world. So if anybody watching this, if you ever have a chance to do I wouldn't call it a floor tour, but actually get as close as you can to the action. Seeing coins made in person is really a fun thing to do and gives you a better understanding of how that all works. So that is a lot of fun. Wanted to also asking about how people collect coins. This is probably one of the most important questions I should ask for people watching this. Like if someone's watching this, God, there's like so many ways to collect mint errors. Like how would you recommend collecting mint errors, or how do most of your clients now, John, collect mint errors?
A lot of them pick there's a few ways, but one way is they'll pick a coin series, like they collect Eisenhower dollars and they'll try to get any of the major types of mint errors on Ike dollars, or they'll collect gold errors. And gold errors are such a scarce series that you could almost say I just collect gold errors, and you would rarely get an opportunity to buy even one, just every so often. But other ways include people will collect them for a certain year, often their birth year. They'll say, I want all the mint errors I can find from the year 1990. Or another way is they will try to do what's called an error typeset. They'll get one of every error type, and they'll just try to build a collection of that.
Well, that's interesting. How I mentioned this earlier. Well, I guess I'll go back to another one. I had one question I was going to ask. I know with the U.S. coins, I sometimes get people who don't know how they want to collect regular U.S. coins. I'll say a box of 20. That's become
Mhm.
like a thing now. Do you see that people with mint errors sometimes, like just try to get like a handful, a box with
Mhm.
20 as interesting as they can get them?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a customer right now who actually was talking about building a box of 20, and that was what he was trying to do. And it allows you to specialize and maybe spend a little more money on each coin, um, and get the highest quality of that error type, or the or the in terms of grade or the dramatic nature of the error itself. So
Yeah,
it
Fred,
can be a really fun way to collect.
Yeah, Fred, you mentioned it earlier. I was going to ask about one of my questions, you guys, is how important quality is for mint errors. Because you talked about your silver dollar. It was, even though it was one known, you were still focusing on the condition of it. It was kind of funny. I was thinking about, well, does that coin bring more because it's you don't upgrade us from a 3 to a 4, do you? Or does that matter?
Well, it didn't when I bought it in 1977, but obviously 50 years later almost, grade is more important. But in general, condition is not as important for an error coin. It's the error itself and the eye appeal. So yes, obviously in today's market, an MS65 double struck Kennedy half dollar is worth more than an AU58, but the AU58 has a good core value because of what it is. So condition is of interest, but not as strict as it is for collecting regular coins.
Tell us your feelings on wheel marks, because that, like, I've seen so many. I have some good put away error coins, like a Buffalo nickel, and like it's off center. That's MS63, but it's got a big giant wheel mark on the face, and it doesn't bother me too much. But I know that's really common on a lot of mint errors, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on the source of the wheel mark. Some places there were never any wheel marks when they ran them through the counting machines. Other places they damaged them a lot. A lot of the wheel marks were also because two coins got jammed in the counting thing, and that's where you get the wheel marks. Not maybe from one coin, but sometimes from two coins getting jammed. I can tell you this, a lot of coins that I bought hundreds of thousands of error coins over the decades from counting room sources, these guys from Brinks or Loomis or Dunbar that would run mint-sewn bags of coins from cents to dollars to put them into the clear plastic tubing or the paper tubing, and that's where the coins would either jam, sometimes with wheel marks, sometimes without, and they would pull them out. They became my best sources for nice errors off centers, maybe double strikes off metals, but they would never have a die cap coin, let's say, because those coins wouldn't fit in the bag from the mint.
It wouldn't have gotten out. Yeah, I was wondering how. I bought a couple large groups of errors from you over the years, and I was wondering, like, where did they come from? But that makes sense that these counting room people, that they would accumulate big groups of them. That does make sense.
Well, when I started, it was bankers that get them because the banks would get the bags and roll them, and then probably I want to say around the late 60s, maybe 70s, banks decided it wasn't profitable. It took up too much time, and so it was the source for coins for Walmart, for retail outlets became Brinks, Loomis, and Dunbar, what we call the counting rooms, as opposed to banks. Banks gave up rolling, new coins again in the early 70s, I believe.
Yeah, as long as we have coins, I hope. As long as
Right.
it's not, it's there. We won't be having pennies anymore. We won't be any more mint or pennies coming out. So
Right.
that'll
Yeah.
be end of an era for that.
Yeah.
Is it? And John, I'll ask you this more because you're probably more in the market now. Do you like when do you see like pricing trends for error coins, or people should buy things because they like them. In
Mhm.
general, over time, and minters, they have a little bit of a price history of being positive, you think?
Yeah, when they started grading mint errors, all the PCGS, NGC, all the major services did. I guess around 98, is that right, Fred? Around 98 or so.
Yeah. Well, PCGS started doing it, I think, around 2000. Because
Okay.
David Hall was never impressed with mint errors. They were always on his recommended sell list along with Civil War tokens when
Oh,
he was doing his newsletters back in the 70s and the 80s.
it's funny.
But with the advent of that, with the grading services, that's kind of started the ball rolling a lot with
Yeah.
pricing, and people could trust, hey, I can spend $10,000 on a mint error and not be worried about it being authentic. And even if it was authentic, it's backed up by a grading service. Before that, mint errors were more like before U.S. coins were graded. There's more of well, let's really make sure of this, and even then, do two or three people want to try to buy this coin, or is it more like one or two people actually trust its value?
Yeah.
That was before
Yeah.
my time, so I'm speaking from reading books there, but I have seen a trend ever since 2001 when I started really dealing with error coins as the market just gradually going up, up, up.
Yeah, and I do think
And
that I do see it's good that they do certifying, because we, this is some subject we talk a long time, but there are a lot of counterfeit mint errors that some of the, like, quote unquote Chinese counterfeits. I've seen some very sophisticated mint error coins. I mean, I've seen 44 steel pennies off center, all kinds of weird stuff. So there is a lot of that out there. So I do think it's very important that if you buy an expensive mint error, you do get it certified. It's probably a really good idea, I would
Agree.
think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'm glad they have you guys on their teams to help with the authentication process, because I'm sure the average coin grader at PCGS doesn't really understand that kind of stuff. So that's good.
Right.
They have experts, you guys, to do that.
And if I can add to what John was saying, when I was doing coin shows in the 70s and the 80s, and they were all raw, I'd lay them out in a velvet pad at a coin show. Every show, I'd have a lot of people come by, advanced collectors, other dealers, saying, "That's fantastic. That's unusual. I've never seen one of those. I collect that. How do I know it's real?" And I would try to convince them that I know it's real. I could explain it. But it wasn't until PCGS and NGC started to certify them that it gave an independent opinion that they were real. And that really exploded collector interest, because, as John said, now they knew PCGS not only graded it, but they certified that it was genuine. And that just exploded the market for type coin errors, modern errors, everything.
And guaranteeing it. So
And guaranteed, yes.
So this is the new 2026 Red Book, which Fred, you've helped me for years and years on the Red Book with mint errors, and John, now you're helping with that role. And we made a few changes on it, and I know some people we took out one of the pricing charts, because we know that it was just John, just so anybody knows John with pricing, he'd rather not put any information than put something that's imperfect out. And I think that chart was imperfect because and Fred, you can maybe talk. I think you mentioned to me one time before, there was like one thing that may be right, but the other thing is like this, you weren't covering it properly.
Well, to give an example, the reason why it's hard to give a simple grid for error coins like in the Red Book, and I came up with those prices for the Red Book for many years, but here's the problem. You have a column, cents, nickels, dime, quarters. So let's take cents, Indian cents. Then you have off-center, double strike, whatever. If you have an off-center column, I had to come up with a price that was like the average price for the error. But when you price an off-center Indian head cent, you have all these factors. Number one, what's the date? Is it in the 1900s?
77's better, probably.
Is it in the 1860s? Is it 10% off center, 50% off center? Does it have a date showing? Does it not have a date showing? Is it VG, and a lot of them are, or is it MS65? To come up with one price for all of those parameters was very, very difficult. So I understand why you took the prices off, because the price really didn't mean anything, but it gave competitive or comparative values.
Right. Yeah, I think that for the next edition, I'm going to try to take a little bit deeper dive, and we're going to try to just because the point of the Red Book is not a price guide for mint errors, because that would be a whole book in its own. And I take the book as it should be, if you're interested in the subject, it gives you enough to get you into the hobby. And that's what we're going to try to work on. And I appreciate your help, Fred, with this edition. I appreciate your help, John, with it as well. And we'll continue to try to make that better. And I think to wrap it up today, I want to give you guys both an assignment. So Fred, I want you to do the second edition of the 100 Greatest Mint Errors. Okay. And John, I want you to start teaching a class at summer seminar on mint errors. So I think that would be good for the hobby, and be good for both of you guys, your error brands. And I know people watching this would probably like to hear more, because this is something we could talk all day on, really, but we just kind of wanted to get some of the highlights on it. And I think, Fred, I really appreciate your sharing some of your 50 years plus experience with this part of the hobby, because I'm sure a lot of the collectors out there have collected them, probably would credit you with their success of being collectors on that series. And John, we all appreciate your being in the game now and being the go-to guy that we can all reach out to help on it. And it's been great to have both of you guys to do it today. And we're gonna we have another podcast for later this week we're going to create, and John will work on that. But hope you've enjoyed having our icons and new movers and shakers, and I appreciate you guys coming on.
Absolutely.
Pleasure.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
It'd be
a
great.
lot of fun. And I again, I apologize for the technical glitches we had earlier, but I think we got it right this time. So hopefully it all recorded and we're all good.
You corrected the errors.
That's
Yeah.
right. We corrected it. It was an error on mint errors. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.